Welcome back, everyone. I had a chance to see the Flash movie, so this will be my review. There's a whole bunch of stuff to talk about, so please don't post spoilers in the comments till after the movie comes out in theaters. But if you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the videos. I've got a bunch more videos planned for when it does come out. I will do a full breakdown, Easter eggs for the post-credit scene, everything else during the movie, because there is a lot of stuff that they cram into this movie. It has to do a lot of stuff for DC just in general. The movie's been through several iterations over the years. They've been trying to make a Flash movie since the late 80s. That's how long they've been trying to get the Flash movie out. Originally, Jeph Loeb, who most of you know from Marvel Television, like he did a lot of Marvel TV series for a while as their president, also wrote some of the most famous Batman comics of all time too. Tried his take on the Flash back in the 80s but couldn't crack the story, so there was never an actor cast for that. But this is well before John Wesley Shipp did the Flash TV show during the early 90s. But right around the time that the studio was doing Michael Keaton's Batman 1989 with Tim Burton, so very apropos. The past several years, all through Zack Snyder building his version of the Snyderverse, like the Man of Steel movie, Batman v Superman, his version of the Justice League, the Flash movie has had several different directors and writers attempt to try and make it until eventually they found Andy Muschietti. Previously, he'd mostly been known for doing the It movies. The past several years, as it passed through all those different directors and writers, the actual movie itself, like the actual story, changed several times until they landed on a version of Flashpoint, which is what you're seeing in theaters now. The movie itself is meant to be a version of Flashpoint combined with Back to the Future tropes in a soft reboot of the DC movies so that James Gunn can recast any of the actors that he wants to in the next several years. And the funny thing about that is that things changed even while Andy Muschietti was still finishing the film. Like when he was hired on, the studio had a completely different 10-year plan for DC movies. Henry Cavill was still getting ready to make Man of Steel 2. He was still going to be their version of Superman for the next 10 years. But by the time he'd finished filming the Flash movie and they were almost finished editing it, James Gunn was hired, which is also kind of funny because there's some moments in the movie that reference James Gunn's other non-Marvel movies just in general. Andy Muschietti would have included some James Gunn's Easter eggs before he knew that he was going to be his boss shortly after they finished filming the movie. But the good news is, even though the movie went through so many different versions along the years as they tried to make it, so many different directors, so many different versions of the story, Andy Muschietti actually did a really good job. So good, in fact, that James Gunn just offered him the job to direct Batman Brave and the Bold.
Your own Batman in a brave and bold direction, what would you want to put on, what kind of spin would you want to put on that character?
Oh, that's, I don't think I can talk to that yet.
One of the best things he does in the movie is the way he treats the different versions of Batman. Like, his versions of Batman are so good. That's one of the reasons why he's probably going to be hired to do Batman Brave and the Bold. And even though all the trailers do make the movie seem like it's a Batman movie with the Flash in it, just because there's so much Batman stuff going on with Michael Keaton's version of Batman coming back and Ben Affleck's version of Batman, the trailers are a little misleading in that most of the movie does follow and is about Ezra Miller's version of the Flash. But obviously the other interesting thing is that he's playing multiple roles, like he plays a couple different versions of Barry during the movie. The movie, just in general, is also meant to be sort of a love letter going off, sending off point for the Snyderverse of movies. They're not completely retconning or getting rid of the Snyderverse of movies in this because we're talking about Flashpoint here, the whole idea of different timelines, the multiverse. They use the movie to canonize many different previous DC movies, even the non-Snyderverse movies, to the larger multiverse, the same way that Marvel has been doing that in its recent movies too. Very apropos, we just got Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. They're kind of doing the same thing in that movie too, because it's coming from Sony and Marvel, not just Marvel themselves. Lots of multiverse going around in the big comic book movies all over the place. If you are a big fan of Batman, though, you will love this movie. If you like Ben Affleck's Batman, if you're a huge fan of Michael Keaton's Batman back in the day, seeing him come back, probably one of the best parts of the movie. For instance, Ben Affleck said that this is probably the best version of Batman that at least he feels like he's ever done in any of his DC movies, including all the Zack Snyder DC movies. Not that Andy Muschietti did a much better job with Ben Affleck's Batman than, say, Zack Snyder did, just that the brief material, the brief scenes that Ben Affleck had in the movie were really, really good.
And it's my best shit I've done. I finally figured out how to play the guy.
No, really?
I got it.
For real?
I was like, hold on. I quit. I know I quit. And I know I came back to it. But I got it now. And
it helps you see the character, and now you want another chance to play it.
And I was like, wait a minute. I got it. Am I still, wait, can I, guys?
Are we still rolling? Can we write another
story? Am I?
When he jokes about wanting to come back all of a sudden now, like, I know I said I was gone, but I want to come back, that's how good he comes off in this movie. Now, he's only in a small part of the movie, but it is a really good send-off for his character. Cannot say enough about Michael Keaton's Batman 2. Not only is he just a great actor, most of you of a certain age, like beyond, I say like the age of like 30 or so, probably remember Michael Keaton's Batman. He probably winds up being your first Batman for the most part. One of my earliest memories of comic book movies is sneaking into Batman 1989 in the theater without really understanding what I was sneaking into, not knowing that it was going to be that original Batman movie. When I was a little kid, no joke, I was in the mall in the movie theater when people still went to malls to watch movies. Snuck into the movie theater right as he was getting ready for that "you wanna get nuts" scene.
Then he had his right shot. Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts.
And if we're talking about breaking records here, bringing people back who played characters from a long time ago, he actually just broke the record for Patrick Stewart's Professor X and Hugh Jackman's Wolverine for the length of time an actor has portrayed a character, so he is now the current record holder. But also Hugh Jackman and Patrick Stewart both coming back in Deadpool 3, so like they are continuing as well too with their characters. And even though they do include a lot of those nostalgic moments from Michael Keaton's Batman in the trailer, those iconic lines, the movie doesn't completely rest on nostalgia when you go to his character. He actually does a really great job as an evolution of his version of Batman, like it's meant to be a continuation of where he left off in Batman Returns. Generally, the movie treats Val Kilmer's version of Batman, Batman Forever, and George Clooney's Batman in Batman and Robin as completely different versions of the character. So if you saw his Batman movies back in the day and you wondered what happened to his character after the events of Batman Returns, they do get into that during the movie. They introduced Sasha Calle as the new version of Supergirl. She's meant to be sort of like the cousin of Henry Cavill's version of Superman, but from a different timeline where she wound up landing on planet Earth. She did a great job as the character. I really do hope that they bring her back when they do the Woman of Tomorrow movie. Like they do have a Supergirl movie planned under James Gunn's new plan, but they haven't announced who that Supergirl is going to be. It's not going to be Melissa from the DC TV universe, so it'll either wind up being Sasha's version of Supergirl or somebody completely different. That's how fresh all of James Gunn's plans for the next 10 years are, but he seemed like he loved the Flash movie so much, and she's so good during the Flash movie. Like, she will be one of the highlights of the film for most people. I would not be surprised if a version of her character comes back in some way in the future, either in Flash sequels, if they wind up doing those, or in the Supergirl movie. Most of her storyline in the film is based on the original Flashpoint story with some big twists. They try to be relatively faithful to some of the big beats of Flashpoint, but they don't do the literal Flashpoint story like they did in the Justice League Flashpoint movie, which was a much more literal adaptation of that comic book story. Or, for instance, the Flash TV show's version of Flashpoint, because they did pretty much the same story a couple years ago. There will be a lot of comparisons between the different versions of The Flash, and they did cross over in the Crisis on Infinite Earths on DC TV. So the TV shows have already been doing this job of canonizing everything together from all over the place, all of these different movies, not just the Zack Snyder line of movies. I don't want to get too much into Grant Gustin's version of The Flash. There'll be a lot of comparisons to him, but a lot of people are just wondering what's going on with the future of all these different DC projects because of the reboot. So I don't want to talk too much about what's going on in the movie because it does kind of get into spoilers. Michael Shannon comes back as Zod from the Man of Steel movie. He was great in that movie, even though it was a very different take on the character. He's playing the same version of the character, just in a slightly different timeline, so there are some subtle variations. The interesting thing, though, is he said that when they called him to come back, he said that he actually talked to Zack Snyder about coming back first and got his blessing. Like, Zack Snyder is generally happy with the movie. Recently, Sasha Calle even said that she was at a screening with Henry Cavill, who saw the movie and gave his blessing as well to her version of Supergirl. So it is nice to hear that they've moved past a lot of the drama behind the scenes with DC movies just in general, because it got really crazy there for a couple years. That being said, James Gunn didn't really have any creative force in the movie. Like, he wasn't hired till after they'd finished filming the movie. There were some minor edits to the ending just to help set things up for his new 10 years of DC movies, just like a couple minor tweaks. But for the most part, the movie is the version that they meant to make before James Gunn was hired. They have been posting a lot of the new music from the Flash movie, and even though I am still partial to the Flash theme from the Flash TV show, a lot of the new music for the movie is really, really good. For the most part, I did feel like the movie was a good send-off to the Snyderverse of movies, like a good swan song, without completely erasing everything or like completely getting rid of the Snyderverse of movies. Like they do leave things in a way that will allow everybody that they want to bring back to come back in the future, should they want to bring them back. But the movie does have a clear beginning, middle, and end, so if they do want to recast Ezra Miller in the future, they can do that and it will make sense. The interesting thing, though, is that before the writer's strike, they did commission and finish a draft for The Flash 2. Like, there is a sequel movie that they have written based on the first movie if they do want to make it, but it hasn't been greenlit yet. That's how happy the studio is with the way the movie turned out. I think it's just a question of how much fans will like the way the movie turned out. Do stay through the credits. There is a post-credit scene. Of course, I'll do a full breakdown Easter eggs for the entire movie for all the post-credit scenes once it does come out in theaters. There is a ton of stuff, a ton of Easter eggs that they cram into this. Like I said, it is a love letter to a lot of those classic DC movies, particularly Michael Keaton's Batman movies, as well as the Snyderverse of movies just in general. I've got a whole bunch of other videos planned for the movie and a bunch of other big stuff coming up, like the Blue Beetle movie is supposed to be part of James Gunn's new DC Chapter 1. That movie will come later this year. They just released a new trailer for it, so of course I'll post that video as quickly as possible this week. Once you do have a chance to see the movie, just post your reactions in the comments below and let me know what you want them to do with the Flash character going forward. Because we did just get Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, though, I will say I didn't like it quite as much as I like Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, but it was pretty solid. Speaking of which, everybody click here for my full Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse Easter eggs video. There are a billion Easter eggs. It's a little more packed with stuff than the Flash movie was, but the Flash movie is also packed with a lot of stuff. And click here for all my other Flash movie videos. Thank you so much for watching. Everyone stay safe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.